we are finally up and running. Proper old warrior. So I made a tactical change quite quickly in this session, and well, it's worked. 5 fish hooked, 5 fish landed, and the biggest fish of the session right at the death. I'm absolutely buzzing with that. So this is Pulbridge Farm, Kew Lake. It's a bit of a local water of mine. It's somewhere I've fished quite a lot over the years, and it's quite a novel design in that all the fishing is carried out from the large central island, and you fish out from the island. You've got the far bank markers over there to mark your boundary, so it means no one can encroach your water. There's a lot of carp in here. It can be quite tricky though, but I'm hoping we'll still be able to put a fish or two on the bank during our session. Well, normally the first thing I do when I get to a venue is get the Polaroids on, go for a walk, looking for fish. But today I thought, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to come straight into this swim and see what happens. That's because at this lake you have to pre-book your swim in advance. Now, it does take a lot of the watercraft out of the equation, but you're still faced with a dilemma of knowing where to place your rigs on the day. Now, on this lake, a lot of the fishing is done over towards the far bank. You've got quite a lot of reeds over on that far margin, and on a day like this where we've got really high temperatures, high air pressure, a lot of those fish are either going to be up in the water or they're going to be seeking out shade and shelter, and I think a lot of the fish are going to be over in the shallow water over on the far bank by the reeds. So although we haven't gone around looking for fish trying to decide a swim, it still doesn't mean to say that you don't have to think about where you're going to place your rigs when you actually get into your allocated swim. So for the bait on this session, all I've brought with me are pellets and boilies. That's because it's a pellet and boilie only rule here at Kew Lake. But in order to make my bait stand out from everyone else's, I've jazzed them up a bit. The boilies I've got here are the Pacific tuna, and they have been soaking in the hot chorizo liquid for over 2 months. I've got a big bucket of prepped bait in the back of the barn, which I keep putting into smaller buckets just so I've got enough for each session. And although they are freezer baits, the hot chorizo liquid has a high salt content, so that goes some way as acting as a preservative. So the baits don't go off, they don't go mouldy. As long as all the baits have an even coating of the liquid, they won't go off. In fact, I think the longer they are soaked, the better they are. The food signals, the attractors, flavour levels, everything's absolutely cranked up. It offers a whole new dimension of attraction, and it does without a doubt make a massive difference. But the baits are quite tacky to the touch. They've still got although they've soaked in a lot of the liquid, they are still quite sticky, quite tacky, and that means they are perfect for adding a powder. So here I've got the Pacific Tuna Booster Powder, which I'm going to add to my bucket of baits here. Give them a really good dusting, a good coating. And there you can see all the baits now are coated with the booster powder. Because they are sticky and tacky to the touch, the powder coats them so well, and again that really does elevate the food signals being emitted from the bait. Now, you may have noticed something parked in the swim here. I've got my bait boat with me. It really is a bait boat dominated water here at Kew Lake. So many people use them. A lot of the fishing is done over towards the far margin, towards the reeds. And although I could just fish with solid PVA bags and you can walk around and bait up by hand, I just think this is going to give me a better presentation, and it's one of those cases where if you can't beat them, join them. So yeah, I'm fine to use a bait boat. One common mistake I do see a lot of people make though when they're using bait boats is they absolutely fill them with bait, have them almost overflowing with bait. Here, conditions aren't great. We've got high air pressure, it's very, very warm. It's not exactly great fish feeding conditions. It is going to be a case of just nicking a bite here and there. So we do just want to be setting nice little traps. For that reason, I'm literally just putting in a handful of pellets into the boat. And then boilies, I've got a handful of boilies, and most of these I'm just going to break open. Again, that just lets all those flavours, food signals and attractors just flood out. Because the baits have been soaking, they're lovely and soft as well. Makes it easy for the carp to eat, digest. So in total, there's probably only, there's 5 whole boilies going in. And that's it. That's my nice little trap, which I'm going to send out over to the reeds on the far margin. The thing I like with this particular boat is the echo sounder. The graphics are built into the handset, so it means you're not having to look at a separate screen on a stand. I can control it, I can see the depths, changes in depth, the contours there of the lake bed as I'm going along. Well, I did have 3 rods in the water for about an hour until a trailer came along and wiped out all the rods. But I'm looking at it as a blessing in disguise, because I was contemplating reeling in at least one of the rods and positioning it closer in. There's been fish showing in the weed just in front of the swim, fizzing as well, so they're definitely feeding. It's crazy that they're doing it with all this disturbance. So yeah, that trailer has kind of forced my hand. The rods are in. I'm having to re-tackle up as well. I'm going with a couple of rods on solid PVA bags. I'm just going to drop them to the right and to the left of the swim, just in little holes in the weed. There's obviously fish moving in around there, and it's not a spot that people fish. Everyone is focused on that far margin, as I was when I got here. But the thing is, you've got to let the fish dictate on the day where exactly you're going to fish. Don't just totally focus on the far margin and that's it. Once you've got your rods in, your bait in, don't be scared to make any other decisions and reel them in. So that's what's happened. And yeah, I'm going to get the solid bags out now to the right and to the left. Hopefully that can nick me a bite. Weave it around that. Oh yeah, no. Well, we're approaching dusk now. There's probably only 35-40 minutes of daylight left. The wind has dropped off totally. It's gone flat calm. There are quite a few fish moving around though, especially close in around this weed in front of me, so I am glad I dropped those 2 rods in little holes in the weed. But it is a little bit disappointing that we haven't caught anything today, but in a way it's hardly surprising. Conditions haven't been good. We do have really high pressure. It's been really warm. A lot of the fish will be tucked away either in the reeds or up in the layers, not really interested in feeding. I think the best chance we will have of a fish will be during the night or that sort of early morning first light. So hopefully that proves to be the case and we can catch a fish sooner rather than later. So I'm playing a fish. Managed to go right down my own margin and do me in the bulrushes. I'm not sure how much you can see, but he's literally just done me on a bulrush right next to the branch. Oh no, he's on. Right. I think it's going to be a bit of a handline special, this one. Okay, well I've got the net under a massive ball of weed and we've got the carp as well. There, we got him. That could have been easier. Yeah. Well, he's the troublemaker that managed to cause me all them problems down that margin. He snagged me up in the bulrushes, but got the waders on, went in after him, and we are finally up and running. He's probably upper doubles, something like that. Proper old warrior. But yeah, it's nice to be off the mark at last. Right, let's slip him back, get the rod back out there, hopefully get another one. Well, good morning. Nothing else happened during the night apart from getting quite a few liners, and then shortly after first light, one of the margin rods was away again, and we've got this, a nice snub nose orange spot on the belly, common, of around 17 pound, something like that. Didn't need to get the waders on to get this one. He did put up a proper good tussle in the weed beds and the reeds though, but no, he was quite cooperative. And that's 2 fish under my belt now, and I do think there's chance of a few more. There's fish moving around the weed close in, and I think a little PVA bag trap could very well do me another bite. So I made a tactical change quite quickly in this session. I started off using runny rigs with a leg clip setup and a washed out pink hook bait, and I quickly changed over to a solid PVA bag approach, short braided hook link, really simple blowback rig with a match the hatch wafter hook bait. I do think at this time of year, I mean we're approaching the end of the summer now, and those fish have had a spring and a summer of lots of anglers on the bank, lots of angling pressure, and the majority of anglers, they are using bright alternative hook baits, and I do think the fish can shy away from them. They've had a whole spring and summer of pressure being caught on bright baits, and I just think a nice subtle hook bait that blends in can get you extra fish at this time of year. And well, it's worked. I've had 2 fish, and as far as I know, I don't think there's been anything else caught while I've been here. So yeah, who knows, it could be the solid PVA bags that are working, it could be the fact I've dropped it in the margins where not many people fish, or it could be the match of the hatch hook bait, or it could be a combination of all 3. So both the bites I've had have been on solid PVA bags down the margin. One rod that hasn't produced is over on the far side on a Ronnie rig, and I need to make a change. I need to do something so I've got all 3 rods working. I think if I'm going to get a bite, I do fancy it to be on the either side margin rods. So I'm going to reel this rod in. I'm going to switch over to a solid PVA bag approach. Right now though, I don't really know where I'm going to put it. There's been quite a few fish showing open water, but they haven't been in my swim. They've been just off to the left in the swim next door, just sort of in the middle. There's been quite a lot of fish showing as well. But in front of me, I've not seen a great deal at all. So I don't really know what to do. I'm tempted to drop it just over the weed in front of me, more so that I can have a slack line on that rod and at least all my bobbins look the same. It's kind of freaking me out. I've got 2 on the deck and 1 up tight. My OCD can't really handle that. So I'm tempted to drop it close in. There has actually been fish close in as well. So yeah, either way, I'm going to get a solid PVA bag tied up, and hopefully by the time I've tied that up, something has happened that will help me to make my mind up as to where I'm going to put it. So I made a bit of a tactical change there. The fish were showing in the swim to my left. The winds picked up though, and the fish definitely started moving a little bit more down in front of me. So I rigged up a solid PVA bag and put it right on my boundary, if I'm honest. It was very much on my boundary line, and yeah, probably a rod length or 2 from where the fish were actually showing, but on the same line, and I've managed to nick a bite. think it's just an angry male. Yes. Yes! That didn't take long. Well, there we go, fish number 3 of the session. And this session has very much been about taking opportunities while they're there. I've been chopping and changing tactics depending on how the fish have been acting and feeding in the swim. And it just goes to show that you shouldn't come to a venue with a game plan and stick to it. Let the fish and the conditions dictate how you should fish. I think a lot of people on here do traditionally focus on that far margin, and then once they've got the bait in and the traps in, quite reluctant to change. But it just shows that by ringing the changes, you can put extra fish on the bank. So I've just tied up a solid PVA bag ready to get out there if I see another fish show. But I haven't told you what it is that I'm using inside the solid bag. Well, this is the mix. It's really simple. It's around 70% of the oily bag mix and 30% of the frozen water snails. Now, although they are frozen, fresh snails, because they're getting mixed in with the bag mix, they do dry out and they don't go off. So yeah, I've had this bag mix like this for months and it doesn't go off. It's a really nice, attractive bag mix full of lots of attractors. And the important thing is it's all small food items. It's all tiny, tiny pellets. The biggest pellet there is 2 mil in size. By using those small pellets, it means there's less air trapped in the bag and I can pack the bag nice and tight. I've also been using the Pacific Tuna booster as well. Been putting in a layer of that in the bottom of the bag, then lowering the hook bait in next, and then using the lead to tap the hook bait in that layer of the powder. So the powder's doing 2 things. It's first of all, it's adding extra attraction into the mix, and a buoyant mix as well, so it's kind of popping and fizzing on the lake bed, attracting fish from all levels. The second reason I like to add the powder is by having that soft layer in the bottom of the bag, it allows me to fold the corners in easier. By folding the corners and licking and sticking them, it makes the bag more aerodynamic and easier to cast. The hook baits I'm using, I'll mention I switched over from using the washed out pinks to just using the Pacific Tuna Match the Hatch wafters. As I said before, I think the fish can shy away from bright hook baits, especially at this time of year when they've had a whole spring and summer of pressure. And by blending in at this time of year, I'm convinced it can get you extra bites from those more cautious feeding fish. Well, this bite did not take long at all. I noticed a bit of fizzing off to the left of the swim, and I managed to sneak a PVA bag right in amongst the feeding fish. I'm not ashamed to say how I managed to sneak that PVA bag in. I'll tell you if I land the fish, eh? If I don't land it, no one needs to know. If I land it, I'll let you into the secret. How's that sound? He's got a bit stuck in this weed here in front of me. Sort of picked up the other rod as well. He's managed to go under the other 2 lines, which isn't a bad thing. It's a bit tight off this side. There we go. Yeah, it's a lot clearer there. It'd be easier to net him here than it would be there. Can you just chuck us a net, please, Mr. Cameraman?
No.
Okay, I'll come back and get it. There we go. There we are. Yes! That was a quick bite. Well, he's not going to win any beauty contests, but that's fish number 4 now for this session. And this one came around very quickly after stealthily dropping a PVA bag. Now, I knew if I was to cast a PVA bag to them fizzing fish, they'd just disappear. They'd just disperse straight away. They won't tolerate a bag landing right next to them. So what I did, I sent the bait boat around them to the back of where the fish were, and then just pulled the bait boat back. So I wasn't using the motors or anything. I just pulled the bait boat back onto where the fish were fizzing, and then just dropped the bag just behind the fish and let the bag swing in on an arc. And it seemed to do the trick. It was a really stealthy way of positioning the bait, and the bait came around within less than 5 minutes of positioning that bag. So yeah, it's nice when a plan comes together and it actually works. We're going into the final evening now, and I've got the rods ready to go. I'm having a bit of a change around though. Last night I had 2 rods in the margins and they both produce fish, but I just haven't seen fish in these margins, in and around the weed. Not seen anything in there today. Most of the fish I've seen have been in open water. Odd fish over on the far margin, but the majority have been open water. And the bites that have happened today have been just with little patches of bait fished around where the fish have been feeding. So my plan for tonight is to put 3 rods out in the open water. I'm going to send them out with the boat. I just want a little patch of bait. I'm going to send out a solid PVA bag and just a little patch of bait. Conditions don't really dictate that it warrants putting in a lot of bait. We have seen fish feeding, but very sporadically. Feed for a little bit, stop, feed for a little bit and stop. And yeah, I don't think it really warrants putting in a lot of bait and trying to get a big hit of fish. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I'm quite happy just to fish for a bite at a time. It's working well for me so far, and hopefully it will work well tonight. Right, let's get these rods out now. Well, it was a really quiet night last night. Didn't have so much as a liner. Didn't hear anything showing. Woke up this morning at first light expecting to see signs of feeding fish. Nothing. That was until about 15 minutes ago when I did see a couple of fish show. So I managed to get a PVA bag out there, stealth mode with the bait boat, kind of going around them and letting the wind drift onto the fish and then dropping a bag. And it brought about the same result as yesterday. I managed to get a really quick bite within less than 5 minutes, and Brad missed everything. He was back at the van. He'd given up on me. He said, that's it, you're not catching anything else. I'm going to go and load the kit in the van. And good job I didn't give up, because we've got a really nice fish in the net. $24.12. Well, what a way to end this session. It's been a great 48 hours here at Poolbridge Farm Q Lake. 5 fish hooked, 5 fish landed, and the biggest fish of the session, right at the death, £24.12. I'm absolutely made up with that. It's a cracking looking fish as well. I'm loving the spacing between the scales there. Almost looks like a fully scaled, proper, lean, powerful fish as well. It feels like solid muscle. I'm absolutely buzzing with that. But it is now time for me to hit the road, and I'm going to be going home a very happy angler. Catch you next time.